Hi, Jess.
It's the 13th, Dick, not the 12th.
Says the 12th.
Yeah, well, that's not what it is.
Mayor, I like your little beard there going. It's nice.
Yeah,
Okay,
I had
we
to
are
decide.
live.
I had to decide between that and painting the living room. I decided on the beard.
Good choice.
Oh, excellent choice, yeah.
All set, Dick.
Thank you. Good afternoon. My name is Dick Brescia. I am the chairman of the Parking Authority. And this is a special meeting of Wednesday, May 13th. The special meeting is a workshop to develop the recovery plan that we are trying to put together. The public does not participate, and I'm told that there were no emails in, but the public can be part of this discussion next week when we have our regularly scheduled meeting, which would make it on the 20th, next Wednesday. That's the regular meeting of the Parking Authority. Before we get on with our agenda of looking at the different options that we have for this recovery plan, I invited the mayor to join us and try to shed some light on what is obviously a continuing confusing situation. So where are we? We're going into June. And what do you see for Norwalk in the next month and then into the summer?
Thank you, Mr. Brescia. Thank you, everybody, for joining the meeting. Thank you, everybody, for serving on the Parking Authority, and thank the staff, Jessica and Catherine. I wish I had a crystal ball and I could tell you exactly what was going to happen. I can tell you that we rolled out the Norwalk COVID-19 reopen plan. We rolled this out, today is what, Wednesday? I believe we rolled this out yesterday. We waited until we got some plan from the state of Connecticut because we wanted to be consistent, not only consistent with the thresholds necessary to move into phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, and phase 4, but also consistent with the terminology that we're using so that we didn't risk people becoming confused between the state plan and the Norwalk plan. I can tell you that the Norwalk plan deals mainly, and you can find that on our website, mainly with, perhaps we can get all of you a copy. I know, Jessica, maybe you can send that to everybody. Deals mainly with city property, parks, beaches, other amenities, the city hall, schools, libraries, city property. But and it's in phases, phase 1, 2, 3, and 4. The state of Connecticut plan deals with other kinds of businesses, nails and beauty salons and other retail and so forth. So it seems as if at this point in time, the state of Connecticut is going to be moving forward on May 20th with opening various businesses, retail, and so forth. I got off the telephone today with Matt Seebeck, who is the general manager of the Sono Collection. They are hoping to open on May 20th or shortly thereafter. They have in place a very comprehensive plan of physical distancing, safety, sanitization, and other things. They're very good at what they do because they have so many other outlets around the country. We are also, as you know, on May 20th, restaurants are going to be able to open for outside dining only. I see two Catherine Heberts here, but one of them is George Sirenides, who's very interested in what we're doing with parking.
Hello, everyone.
Hi, George.
Oh yeah, you're right. I am coming up as Kathy.
I told you, yeah, I wouldn't lie to you.
Oh, now I don't have to worry about what I say now.
Oh, thanks, George. Larry, can you change his name, please?
The reason Larry can't change his name and nobody knows how to spell it.
I changed it just to George. How's
There
that?
you go.
Works for me.
Restaurants are going to be able to open to outside dining only. And we're looking at what things we can do to accommodate the restaurants and help them to the greatest degree possible. One of the things we're thinking is there going to be a place where we can close down some of the road and allow dining in the parking spots that are there? I'm waiting for a proposal from my chief of economic development and her staff as to how that could be accommodated, especially since the only location that we could really do that is Washington Street and North Main Street, perhaps. But we may be looking for other options, other opportunities where we could accommodate some of the restaurants. Now, the interesting thing is that the governor's executive order 7MM indicates that if you have another piece of property that's not necessarily contiguous to your property, the restaurant can serve there. So I use the Harbor Lights, for instance. They own a parking lot across the street where they have overflow parking for their restaurant. According to the governor's order, they could set up tables in that parking lot. They could set up tables along the seawall in the parking lot that's right next to their building. So there's a lot of different things in there that allow people to do things. They can't have an outside bar. They can serve alcohol at the tables. And if they serve alcohol, they have to be able to serve food. So it's not going to allow just a place that serves alcohol to open up and serve alcohol. So that's one thing that we're working on, and that's definitely something that would probably impact the parking authority if we were to open up a street and use some of the parking spaces on Washington Street for tables. You know, we're trying to move as responsibly as possible with reopening the amenities in the city. So when we talk about the beach, we're looking at opening up the beach. The first time that we open it, it'll be open to Norwalk residents to park on the beach, in the beach parking lot, and others who cannot be, obviously, you know, there's a Supreme Court decision saying that we can't restrict people's access to the water. So non-residents would be asked to park at Taylor Farm, and limiting the number of non-resident parking over there to about 50, and people parking at the beach. We would cut that capacity in half and make about 500 parking spaces for residents. The main thing we want to do is do this in a controlled way so that we don't end up moving too quickly and having a situation where we end up having a resurgence of the virus. We've seen other places that are opening up. South Korea is one of them. I believe, if I'm not mistaken, the Philippines, some other places that have opened up a little too quickly, and they started seeing an increase in the number of cases again. We're using the threshold that when we see a reduction in the numbers of hospitalizations, and when we see a slowing down of the cases, and when we see enough PPEs for people and enough testing stations and enough testing facilities where people can get tested, that's when we're going to be moving from one level or one phase to the next. You know, I liken it to a, you know, you don't just flip off the switch. You know, you don't take the light switch and turn it back on and everything's back to normal. I believe there is a faint light at the end of the tunnel, and I believe that light should be controlled with a dimmer switch so we can gradually increase the light and make sure that we move forward without jeopardizing what we've already done. I know people are getting frustrated. I'm getting frustrated. Believe me, there were no more difficult decisions I'd had to make since I've been mayor, of closing down businesses. As you know, I was the first one in the state to close down nail parlors or barber shops and beauty salons. The state followed right after. I was the first one in the state to limit the number of customers in the big box stores and advocate for one-person shopping and one-way aisles with the work of the of the corporate executives of the big box stores. So we had to make the tough decisions. But as I said, my number one responsibility is to protect my community and keep our people safe, and I take that very seriously. So we're trying to move back into a place where we can open up, but open up gradually and safely, and making sure that we're doing it responsibly. So that's all I have, but you can, we'll get you a copy of the reopen plan. If you take a look at it, it was a comprehensive effort by my staff, looking at what we're hearing from the medical experts. I know everybody, we have so many experts out there that know that this is not serious. Oh, this is way serious and these things are happening. A lot of misinformation being put around on social media. But I choose to listen to the medical experts who study these viruses, who study the trends, who studies the spread, and they know that viruses act similarly. You know, one virus is going to act like another. Unfortunately, the COVID-19 or the coronavirus is a very contagious, far more contagious than the flu. And then I start thinking about in terms of the book of Revelations in the Bible, and we get the coronavirus, and now we have the monster bees coming in. I don't know what's next. It'll be the 4 horsemen of the apocalypse, or what's going to happen. But, you know, we have to deal with everything that gets put our way. So that's all I have.
Thank you, Mayor. And if you find out when the 4 horsemen are coming, and if they're coming in June, would you let us know? Okay.
You'll be the first to know, believe me, because I'm sure we'll find a parking place for them.
Okay, you got it. Thank you. The discussion on the recovery plan, we have several options. We have 3 options on the table. 2 we have pretty much looked at, but Eric and Judd have spent a lot of time in putting together a gradual rollout. And I think that's probably going to be the main focus of what we want to discuss tonight in the first, or this afternoon, in the first phase of this program. So Kathy, why don't you, you work closely with Judd and with Eric. So why don't you set the stage and let the gentleman take over.
Okay, Mayor, I did get the reopen plan. I sent it to the board, so they have it, just so you know. Yeah. So hello, everybody. Good evening or good afternoon. I'll give you a little brief overview and summary, and then I will turn the presentation over to Eric and Judd. The Parking Authority response to the COVID pandemic began immediately, starting March 18th, when the mayor announced business closures and work at home policies. They suspended enforcement beginning March 18th, which included public messaging, bagging the meters, and posting free parking signs. They suspended parking fees system-wide April and May. They reduced expenses, furloughed 39% of the parking staff while continuing to provide essential services for over 4,300 on and off street parking, maintenance, and cleaning of 11 city-owned parking assets. They approved last month the use of the Parking Authority's accrued fund balance to cover projected expense shortfalls up to $1,446,604. Now the governor and the mayor have targeted May 20th as a slow, gradual, phased-in state and citywide opening. So the Parking Authority is evaluating several recovery scenarios. Included in the agenda packet is the PowerPoint that we presented last month, which included options 1 through 3 and the year-to-date financials through April 20th, which has a balance of $76,579 year-to-date. Dick Brescia, chairman, he had asked Eric Rains and Judd Ailey to evaluate recovery scenarios and options and recommend a possible plan. Myself, Stothy, and Rocky worked with Eric and Judd to assist them in developing their recommendation, which balances the financial impact of the Parking Authority's budget and the responsibility to manage city-owned parking assets and on-street parking, the responsibility to ensure a net budget, and also include economic development initiatives such as touchless payment, curb management that assist the businesses with their reopening plans. So with that, Stothy, you're going to bring up your shared screen for Eric and Judd.
All right. Bear with me here.
I don't have it.
Everybody see that?
Yep.
Yes, thank you, Scott.
Eric, you need to unmute, and so does Judd.
This is Eric. I've unmuted. Judd, you wanna start off? You want me to start off?
I'll start here. We worked on this for the last 2 weeks. We looked at all these different scenarios here. At the end, we all agreed that 4 would be the best choice as a plan. Obviously, we all know we're not sure what's going to happen. And so this is just our best guess, I would have to say, as to how we think things are going to work out. Scenario 4, that is. And Eric, you want to add to that in any way?
Yeah, scenario 4, and as we go through the presentation, you'll see that the perspective of thinking evolved as we were considering 1, 2, and 3, and it made sense to us with what you'll hear in a bit of why approaching it the way scenario 4 approaches it makes the most sense, because it allows for the intake of data as we move beyond the opening of the city, and the opening of parking, which or managed parking, which we're saying in this presentation would be June 1st. So as you see these sheets, we've tried to organize the information in ways that's easily sort of understood, because it boils down to a lot of numbers and a lot of graphs and a lot of assumptions and a lot of things that they feel like they turn circular after a while. So we think we've boiled it down to the critical information that would convey the thinking behind number 4 and how it folds in, how the parking authority folds into that scenario. Hopefully in the near future, beginning to see things return to normal. Rocky and staff have put together tools that are not in this report, but they're in the background that we think will be critical as scenario 4 plays out, if everyone agrees with us. As we plug in the data that will be collected, then it'll give us a basis of evaluation so that we can make further plans as to how to continue to respond to the impact of this coronavirus.
Well said.
So, Judd, do you want to go through the components of this sheet?
Well, I think we probably need to move to the next couple of slides here if we're going to talk about all that.
Okay, there aren't a whole lot of pages here, so we can go back and forth.
Does anybody have any questions about anything at this point?
Judd and Eric, just let me know when you want me to advance the slide. So I'll just stay on mute.
Okay.
Okay.
Let me say something, John. Why don't you go through, you and Eric go through this in detail, and then we will let everybody ask questions afterwards. We'll take the perspective of what you're talking about.
Okay.
Okay. We looked at all these 4 scenarios here, 1, 2, and 3. which had a lot of assumptions, and personally, I found them 1, 2, and 3 fairly complicated in terms of discounts over a period of months, the discounts changing and things like that. And at the end of the day, I think we picked 4 because it's easily adjustable as data comes in almost week by week. And I think if you can move to the next page.
But before you do, let me just add on to that. You touched on something that's really critical, and that's in scenarios 1, 2, 3, and 4. What we ultimately agreed on related to those, which is what Judd just said, was the changes in the percentage of fees we were considering. And the reason that we decided that was so complicated is because how do you message that? How do you send a new message every month that the fees are different than the prior month? And how do you expect people to keep up and understand it? And especially since the progression of this rollout means that in 1, 2, and 3, each month was an increase in the month prior. So we felt that it would give the opportunity to create confusion, and then also create frustration because it's getting, it's additional every time the first of the month rolls around. So as Judd said, scenario 4 just sort of puts us in a spot, gives us the ability to evaluate the plan related to how people are actually using it, instead of making assumptions about how they might use it as the next few months play out.
So if you look at this sheet, you can see scenario 1, 2, and 3. They have different discount rates as the months go by, proceeding into the fall. And as we've said already, initially that looked appealing, but at the end of the day, I think we just decided it would be too complicated to manage and message to the public. So in scenario 4, what we're ending up with is the plan as of today is June 1st. With the hourly rates on the street and the parking lots and the garages are going to go back to full rate, and then the monthly permits will be discounted, as you can see on the bottom of this sheet. And the plan is to remove the bags on around the 20th. Is that correct? What we settled on, right?
Yeah, that's what we said, yes.
And enforcement would start around the 1st of June, but be relaxed and friendly. And I think we also agreed to meet like this at least once a month, and maybe more if the need arises, if we see a lot of different activity than what we think is going to happen. So
Go ahead. I'm sorry.
Yeah, let's just jump back there if you would. So as Judd said, that you can see here how complex it would be to have new rates every month, and again, this starts to tell the difficult story, how it would be difficult to convey that to the public. Every month that things would be different, and so we felt that within scenario 4, by returning the on-street and hourly spots and the parking assets back to full rate, then we can track how they're used, and then make adjustments to some of this as we move forward over time.
Go ahead.
So here is just some criteria that that we use to develop the scenario, that it's based on the time period of February to December, and that the recovery is intended to follow the path that the state and the city are taking, so that we're so that we're all working together on it. We didn't say this, but hopefully it's obvious that we're putting the time frame of when we began to reactivate the management of parking. We're tying that directly to when the city is anticipated to open, so that we're, because we are part of the city, that it makes sense to everybody that this occur at the same time. And so the third bullet there is that there would be no hourly rate changes in on or off street parking spots, and that the permits for those assets would be discounted according to the rollout plan, and that we would use the period of June to September as a time to gather data on how the parking assets are actually being used, so that we could establish that baseline we mentioned earlier, that we could make projections that we would feel a lot more comfortable making now, because we don't have any data to base it on right now. It would just be assumption on top of assumption, which we felt was troubling, was troubling water to be in. You go to the next one. So this one is the orange line is our approved budget that obviously doesn't take this situation into account. And the blue line, it shows the impact of the COVID virus on the parking authority's operating revenue. And then it shows the projections of what scenario 4 would do for us. And it doesn't put us, back at our budgeted number in December, but it does fall in line with the amount of our fund balance that we've approved to use, and it puts us in not in the black yet, but closer to it if scenario 4 can play out this way. You want me to go, Judd?
Yeah, well, this is just a summary of rate changes. And as we've said, there's no changes to the hourly rates on or off the street. And the permit rates are reduced substantially. And I think a key part of this too is the relaxed enforcement. But all of this, we'll be discussing as the months go by and adjusting. I think we'll be definitely making some adjustments to it.
So just another thought on this is, this slide doesn't mention the bags that are on the meters, but ultimately we're all going to need to vote and approve a plan. But the bags on the meters really don't require a vote, so we can get into that more later. But they're a component of this that we feel is really important to get those removed as soon as possible. But we're saying the 20th. But see if it's on the next slide. Maybe that's where it's mentioned. No, it's not. But anyway, so this slide it's another summary showing how the assets, some of them show discounts, and then taking it from current rates to that discounted rate. So it's something that could be easily communicated. This one talks about the removal of the bags by May 20th. It talks about the ongoing cleaning and disinfecting that we're doing. We feel that that things that we can be focusing on while we're monitoring the usage of parking is things like touchless parking options, and that involves technology. Some we use, some we can look into, like text to park, for example, would be new for us, for people who don't want to download another app onto their phone. And then also to promote the online services that are available for those two garages. We also thought within the Park Mobile app, new users, we could offer 2-hour free for the first 2 hours of their use after they download and activate that app. And then the second is that Catherine's already had discussions with the Park Mobile, the company of Park Mobile, about reducing their transaction fees to follow our ramp up. So fees incurred starting June 1 would be at a reduced rate, and they would bump up as the rest of the parking bumps up. And then, we've observed, I think we've all observed how important, and I think, Mr. Mayor, you touched on this, the difference that our curbsides are, how they're going to exist after this, during and after this, than they have in the past. And we think the parking authority needs to assist in the planning, or certainly in the execution of plans to convert possibly some existing regular parking spaces to shorter time parking spaces for delivery services to pick up, or for people to pick up their orders. And then also, if there are opportunities where we say here to add on-street spaces where possible, but it's really about identifying places where that could play a role in all of this, in whatever shape it takes. And there's some specific locations have come into the conversation that could be considered. And so to the degree that we can accommodate what happens now with the way people are utilizing restaurants, we just feel that there's a need for more of those kinds of spaces than we've had in the past. And then on the public relations and marketing, the reason that's on here is because we feel we need to communicate often, and that communication always needs to have an undertone of why managed parking is a good thing. We've already had some feedback from some people whose default reaction is, why can't all the parking be free? And there's in the understanding of managed parking, there's very clear explanations of there's very clear explanations of the fact that free parking isn't free, and the cost that free parking takes on the municipalities and the businesses, it makes it certainly not free. So our objective is to convey that either in subtle or not so subtle ways through our messaging.
That it?
That's what we have.
Okay. I want to get input, a reaction from the rest of the members of the parking authority. Can I get everyone's picture up here that are here? Okay. I want to go around the room one at a time, just to get your reaction. I have my own thoughts, but I'll wait until I hear what everyone has to say. So Mike, why don't you respond first to what you've heard and seen?
Sure. Thank you, Dick, Judd, Eric. Great job, man. I appreciate the work. That's awesome. And I
staff.
totally, and who?
And the staff.
And this, of course, the
Yes.
staff. I agree with four. My initial thought while you guys were talking about it was, we definitely should take the bags off the meters on May 20th. I feel like that is very congruent with the mayor's May 20th, and a great symbol of kind of, reopening on our way back. I think that it's a wise not to go changing percentages and trying halves and quarters and things. Leave it all the same, and we just not enforce for January and let it be, people are going to pay as they will. I don't think we have to say very much at all. We can use enforcement and non-enforcement as our sort of working back into getting open again. But I definitely agree with pulling the bags off the meters. That's what I got.
Okay, Tom?
I agree certainly with yanking the bags off the meters, no question about that. I'm a little hesitant about going up to 100% of on-street fees and parking fees. I think we'll end up getting a backlash with that. And I don't know if that happens. I hope I'm wrong. But if it does, how long does it take to change the rates if we're reprogramming these machines and stuff? Is it an easy thing to do? Is it difficult, Stash? What's the deal?
But Tom, before he answers that, it's two-sided. We felt one is just the physical act of doing it, but the second, and the one that stuck with us, is messaging it. How do you convey what the rates are? Because each technically, I believe technically each rate change requires signage changes. And so, as we were thinking, or at least as I was thinking about how to do it, the arms and legs of changing it every month has so many that it just made it very difficult to think possible.
Okay, well, I understand that. Maybe I'm missing the signage thing. Aren't the meters programmed to tell you what the fees are? I mean, are you talking about physical signs stuck on posts or phone poles or something like that?
No, I believe you're correct, Tom. It's the meters that indicate the fee.
Yeah.
Is that Rocky? That's correct?
Ross?
Yeah, I think he's muted. But yeah, it's going to take, we can't program it from the back end, but Rocky can tell you a little bit about more of the timing of it, if that were needed. It may take a few weeks.
Yes, it takes a couple of weeks to program the IPS meters, and also there's there are signs on the actual meters that indicate the rates. So those has to be changed as well. So there's going to be rate changes, signs, and the programming takes.
Okay. I guess I haven't looked at them that closely, but okay.
The one option that I had brought up in the past, but we didn't incorporate here, if there is a lot of pushback on this, is we could adjust hours, and that might be simpler than rates.
Okay.
Hey, if I can,
I'm sorry, Mike, go ahead.
I just want to throw this. I think the pushback and, the fact that the shops and restaurants could be upset with us in some way really focuses mostly around the enforcement. That is to say, if we start enforcing in June and giving out tickets and, making people pay and park and leave every 2 hours and do all the normal stuff that we do, that would get a huge pushback. I think if we just take the bags off the meters and let the people pay at will, we don't have to even say much, but just not enforce, we won't see the pushback that I think we're talking about.
Okay.
I think that's a good point, Mike.
Yeah.
Because it could, of course, the people that are doing the enforcement need clarity on how to enforce. We can't just say relax it and then leave them at their own interpretation of that. So we have to figure that out. But I think removing the bags with no fanfare and the signs is the way to handle it. And then, maybe the plan with internally with the people who are enforcing is to say, if, don't consider it a violation for 4 hours instead of 2 hours, or, whatever
Okay.
it is, to get some.
Well, no, I don't think you change anything. Right now, their mandate is to enforce for safety. No handicap parking, no parking in front of a fire hydrant, no double parking, that kind of stuff they're doing right now because it's a safety issue and we need to do that. That's why they're still on the payroll and why they're still on the staff. We don't have to change that through June. They still need to enforce the fact that the parking has to be done correctly. But in terms of metering and allowing parking, we just not enforce any of that. And I think that would hold back, or I think that would allow us to proceed without a big pushback.
Or what if we ramped up the complimentary time notices? If there's a car that's longer than it should be in a spot, maybe the folks on the ground put that notice that says, something like, I don't know what the words are, but we've noticed that you've been here longer than technically permitted.
Right.
Yeah.
The courtesy card. No, that's a beautiful step along the way, right? Yeah. Maybe it's the second week or third week of June or something. We begin putting these courtesy cards back on and saying, okay, guys, here we come. We noticed this, please, that sort of thing. It can be ramped up depending on how the mayor handles the next phase and when that happens as well, which leaves us flexible.
I guess where I was kind of coming from is all these reopening plans you hear, it's gradual. We want to be safe and be this. And we don't want to come out with guns blazing on enforcement. Mike is right. And it sounds like that's covered. So
yeah,
I'm okay with that.
Right. And so maybe, if everyone agrees that we go with full rate June 1, maybe those courtesy cards get revisited and the guys that are doing enforcement have options of a box to check that says, we've noticed your after June 1, an option could be, we've noticed that you didn't pay for parking. We noticed that you've been here longer than the maximum, whatever the reason to put it there, where you typically get a ticket, they could check it and say, we've noticed that this didn't occur. So here's a complimentary pass, this time, but next time, follow the rules.
Sure. The city, as the city reopens, please remember you can't park here overnight.
Right.
Or something along those lines. Absolutely.
Hey guys, can I just add something really quick?
Sure.
I agree with everything you're saying. And Eric, you probably know this as well as I do, because you're down here all the time. This is essentially trying to reclaim a lot of these spaces, especially in Sono. Yeah. That is exactly what you guys were talking about when I first got on board, how the residents have taken over the spaces. Once they became free, the residents figured it's closer, it's more convenient, and they started parking there, and those cars stay there definitely all night long, and now a good part of the day. So you're on the right track with that. I think the bag's coming off sooner than later makes absolute sense, just to let them know that parking enforcement is going to start up again. And as far as the rates go and all that, I mean, I'm going to leave that up to you guys, because that's a lot to talk about and discuss, the multi-tiers and how you get back into charging. But just to let the residents know that starting June, there is going to be some sort of parking enforcement. As of right now, it's a free-for-all, which is to be expected. As soon as it became free and no enforcement, anyone that could take advantage of it was taking advantage of it. So we just want to know, before we start handing out tickets and upsetting a lot of the people down here, hey guys, we're going back starting June. Just so you know, the bags are off, visible. One, maybe start putting instead of the 15-minute notices that we're starting park, whatever you guys decide makes sense. However, to get that point across, that we're starting to enforce parking. Don't leave your cars here all day long. It's not the option anymore. Just to get it out of their head that it's going back.
Good point.
Thanks, George. Yeah, absolutely.
You guys are on the right track. You guys are saying all the right things.
Okay. Jessica, your comments?
Oh,
Yeah,
Yeah.
just, I think it's great. And I think all the scenarios really help to build some perspective around what's possible and how to be looking at it. I think that one of the larger challenges we've had is trying to communicate what we're doing and how we're doing it and articulating how we've come to the numbers and how we've come to the rate. So I think that we want to pay particular attention to if the rates do change over time based on occupancy and based on lots, sort of what that looks like and how those numbers are coming together, and the way that's being articulated to the public and to commuters. But I think in general, it looks really good. I think the key piece is the communications, and we have a database that we've been using that has over 600 businesses in Norwalk, and we've been working with the Chamber of Commerce and also the mayor's office to use social media. So I think we've gotten better at communication over the last 8 weeks or so. But again, I want to make sure that there's no confusion with when those rates do change, how they're being calculated and what they're being looked at. Because I think some of the questions that we have received in the past are how do you decide what the rate is, or what does that look like, or how do you decide how long that rate is in place or not in place? And so I think we just need to be prepared to be able to answer that with some information.
All right, let me share my 2 cents for what it's worth. I tend to agree with Tom in that starting it off with the full rate invites a negative response. I think the thought of taking the courtesy card approach to handling the enforcement is a good idea. And I also think it's a good idea that both Eric and Judd had, and it's the need to communicate clearly what's going on. In my feeling, trying to start this thing on May 20th is not the right thing to do. It's too quick. It's next week, and we're going to have to spend a lot of time explaining, just what it is that we're doing. The concept of having a full rate that you've described begs a question for me. You have stipulated in there an amount of revenue that would be generated based on these rates, and the revenue would increase over a period of time. How did you do that? I mean, what did we multiply? What percentage of sellout and usage did we use to get those numbers?
So Dick, before staff answers that, the only thing we've suggested to be May 20th was the removal of the bags. The plan of scenario 4 is June 1st. So there's a little bit more time there. It may still not be enough, but a little bit. Staff, if you want to explain the form.
Yeah, sure. That's a great question, Dick. And you're not the only one that's asked that. So, and Rocky, you should unmute too, so you can jump in if we need to. But first, I really have to give a lot of credit to Rocky, who put this elaborate spreadsheet together for us in short time, so we can do this kind of demand-based projections and analysis based on historical demands for the system. And this was put together basically for every location. And then it rolled up into the projection models that we had circulated in the past. So that's where options or scenarios 1, 2, and 3, when they originally were started, there was really just a basic assumption that everything would go back to 100% demand, because we'd started it early. The thought was, oh, this is going to be over quickly. So the demand piece of it wasn't really that much of a factor at the time. And what we were asked to do at that time was really to look at the impact on revenue and know how we could adjust expenses accordingly. So as the pandemic continued and things got changed and governmental restrictions increased and changed, we had the board had created this subcommittee with Judd and Eric chairing it, and we had some calls on, okay, well, you know, what do we do next? And what we had decided the best solution was to look at everything on a location by location basis, because every location has a different user mix, a different number of residents versus commercial parkers versus just hourly parkers, and different capacities. So that changed demand as well. So we created this spreadsheet, and Rocky did it, so we could play around with demands, and rates. So when we had, when we continued our discussions as a committee, if somebody said, well, what if we change the demands for on-street? How does that actually look? And, you know, it automatically calculated, and we could see the impact. I don't know if you want to get into the weeds or actually see it. I can show you, but I don't want to get into the details of it.
Seth, can you bring up that first slide that shows, you know, all the numbers?
While you're doing that, I'd like to just tack on that you touched on an important point that, you know, as we talked about all of this and how to approach it, you know, it became important to us to acknowledge
First one.
all the parking assets are not equal. They're not, thinking of something that would apply to the Webster lot or to a structure like either the Maritime Garage, the people that the usage of those assets are different. And, you know, Haviland is a good example where there's a very large residential component of people with permits there. The Maritime Garage, not so much. So we felt that, and that's where Rocky's sheet is so important, is because it takes the nuances of the assets into account as it tabulates the numbers that are on that chart.
I think it's worth showing that briefly, just because it's complex. It's not, none of this is simple, and I think that helps.
Okay, but Catherine, you want to do this? You want me to cover this? The first sheet here. Do you want me to talk about this?
Yeah, I mean, you wanted it up, so go ahead.
I think I just wanted to go back to this for a second because it's the highest level of all the scenarios, and so, you know, as we consider all of this, I just want to keep in everyone's mind that scenarios 1, 2, and 3, as staff has said, you know, they assumed, they're not assumed, but they were under the thinking that the demand for parking would return to what it was pre-COVID, you know, pretty much right away. And so the thought about an incremental increase in rates, so assuming the demand was pretty much what it was, then we were focusing on the rate, and we were going to reduce the rate and phase the rate back in, assuming demand was there. But in scenario 4, we're not assuming demand is going to be there. So I think that's an important distinction between number 4 and the others, is that scenario 4 really kind of assumes that demand is not going to be there. And using the sheet that Rocky created, it gives us the ability to track whatever the usage is, and then make some determinations about you know, what to do after say September. So if you have that sheet, Stat, it's just to give everybody a glimpse of it.
Yeah, I can bring it up.
I agree with you.
Just so you know too, if we applied the same demand changes in scenarios 1, 2, and 3, these numbers would look drastically much worse. So it wasn't even worth going through the exercise. So scenario 4 kind of evolved as kind of the best practice and the best way to go through this process. So let me open up. All right, so this is the data sheet. Can everybody see that?
Not yet, no.
No.
Let's see here. Why is that?
Maybe you have to stop sharing and then upload the other one.
Yeah, that's okay. Yeah, you're right.
Ladies and gentlemen, just quickly, I'm going to have to leave, so I will see you later.
Thank you, Mayor.
Hi, Mayor.
Can everybody see that now?
Yeah, but I think you want to go to the, you want the data. Is that what you want, Eric?
This is it.
Judd was just suggesting that we show everybody.
Yeah, so basically what this shows is the, what everybody has seen in the past was this spreadsheet in scenarios 1, 2, 3 that showed by month the impact. But what flows into that in this scenario is this data sheet, which is basically the demand and rate assumption. So for example, transient hourly demands, we made an assumption that it was going to start out across the board at 25%. So these aren't permit parkers. We're just talking about hourly parkers. So over the next 8 months or 6 months, that was the escalation in demand compared to what demands were last year. So 25% of what we had last year in June, 40% in July, and so on until we get back to 90% in December, which is kind of the new normal. And then hopefully we hit back to where we were last year in January of 2021. So that was the type of analysis that was going on for each location, and the rates, as Eric and Judd said, at 100%. So that was the process, and it goes down to all locations, including our violation assumptions and lease income. That's a small part of the revenue for the authority.
So that so Stathis, these percentages in the demand columns is what generates that graph. And,
right.
And so so let's say we get let's say we have this conversation in July and we have real data for June. Am I understanding it correctly that we could plug real data in? And
yeah, so we can adjust this if we see, if we had, just in round numbers, if we had 100,000 transaction or 10,000 transactions in June, or 10,000 last June, but we're estimating only 25%, 2,500. Then if we get something more like 5,000, well then maybe we adjust July and August and we relook at that. So this could be kind of a living, breathing document just for analysis. And then when we get other real data like our operations report, we'll be able to do what big data helps us do. We'll run some analytics and look at trends and provide that so you can make some educated business decisions and policy changes if you need to.
Okay. Thank you.
So I'm going to get off of this page.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Let me get back to my point. And again, Eric and Judd, this is an impossible job right now. And so I think you guys did a very good job, and Stathis and Rocky, there's rationale behind everything you're doing. The one thing that's bothered me on this, and it's all over the country, we do not have any empirical information on how the public is going to react once this gradual opening takes place. Some people are going to want to, oh boy, I'm going to go out and dine outside a restaurant. Some restaurants are going to say, we're not going to open. Our margins are too narrow. We'll wait until there's more of a demand. In the background, one of the things we're trying to do is to protect the fund balance that we have from a business point of view. And because we don't have, at least I don't think we do, a sound rationale for how people are going to react, I'm uncomfortable with moving it as quickly as we're talking about. And this is for discussion, and you know, the five of us will vote on it and decide what we want to do. But I would suggest that we continue the way we're doing. You know, we're not charging anything for the month of May. In June, if we reopen and we have, by design, lax enforcement, which I agree with, we're not going to be talking about a whole lot of revenue that's going to be coming in to the city. We've got a public that's nervous. We've also got a public that we've been helping from a financial point of view, because we can't do anything about the health, but we've been helping them from a financial point of view. And so I'm, as Tom had voiced his concern, I'm concerned about going into a full rate right off the bat. I understand the rationale for it, but I have a suggestion. Because the public relations are going to be a very important part of this thing. What I would do is to use the month of June to put together a public relations campaign explaining what we're going to do, and start with whatever rates we're going to start with the beginning of the next fiscal year, July 1st. Use the month of June to communicate. Use the month of June to test and see what's going to happen. If you want to use, you know, lax enforcement, that's fine, and use the courtesy cards, and you put on the card. Beginning next month, if you had been here as long as you've been, this would have cost you whatever the hell it would be. But I think we, because it's so complex and we don't know what how the public's going to react. And we do know that people are still hurting financially. That to open up and say we're going to open up at the full price is, it could be a public relations nightmare. It might help from a long term in reestablishing what the parking authority wants to do. And I'm willing to go along with whatever everybody goes with. But those are my concerns. And then taking the plan that Eric and Judd have put together and either modifying it or going with it, and starting it on July 1st, I think would be better from a communication point of view, and from a revenue point of view. It's not going to be. I just don't see that the month of June, as it's set up, is going to deliver any financial impact that's worth the impact, the negative impact that we may have. So I'm concerned about that. But these are the things, that's why we're having this meeting. These are the things that we can discuss when we get together to vote on exactly how to go forward. And it gives us an opportunity to take everyone's point of view and think about it when we have our meeting next week, because that's when we'll be talking about implementing a specific plan.
Dick?
Yes.
one thing I had brought up in our meetings prior to today with Eric and Kathy Stats is to when we start charging, take the bags off and only on the street. You know, that's the paid parking. Let the lots in the garages, which are for transient people, be free for now. That would get, I would think that would get some of the residents off the street. And of course, if, you know, the bags come off, we'd have very lax enforcement. But as George said, you know, the residents are hogging up all the streets. And if the restaurants are open, we want to get them out of there. Let them go park for free in the surface lots. Let them go park at the Webster lot. Let them go park in the Main Street lot, and let the public know it's free in the lots, just not on the streets. And we can start to build our data that way. We can see who's parking on the street, who's parking in the lots. We can see maybe a trend building. So I don't know what you think of that, but I think
that's certainly worth a discussion. I think that's a good addition. The
you know, we just start out slowly.
Yeah, we still have to come up with a plan to assist the restaurants who want to have outdoor parking if the plan is put together. So some sort of curb management has to be in place, and that would be in the month of June.
Outdoor seating.
Maybe we do limit that to the areas that we're talking about using curb management, and take Judd's idea and keep all the lots free.
So I think it's realistic to think that hopefully a version of scenario 4 is what we ultimately agree on.
Mm-hmm.
But Stathis, if you could go back to the first slide, just to touch on what Dick was saying about protecting the fund balance.
Slide of the presentation
of the deck, yeah.
Okay.
We've approved of the use of 144604. You see at the bottom there,
yeah,
of money from the fund balance, and under scenario 4 in red is the 1453 number, which is which would be covered by the current approval of the use of a portion of the fund balance, based on the chart that Rocky put together and that evolved into the graph. So in protecting the fund balance, you know, whatever's left after the 1.4, whatever scenario we come up with, if we're going to use it means we're potentially further using the fund balance and leading to the potential of exhausting it. And then what do we do if we're not back to where we're at some sustainable level? There are probably additional operational costs that could be reduced or eliminated to get some of those numbers lower. But I just want to be very careful that, you know, you're exactly right, Dick, that whatever decisions we make, we understand that it's potentially drawing more and more from our limited fund balance.
Well, you're right on target. One of the items that we have, the second item that we have tonight, talks about options to reduce costs. And let me just touch on that because you brought that up. Catherine and I went before the Board of Estimate and Taxation about a week ago, and they had our budget, and we had an exchange back and forth, and they wanted to know why we didn't change the budget. And I had sent a cover memo that said, when we put the budget together last December and January, we were talking about a whole different kind of economy. And so when we put the budget together, the parking authority had felt that rather than put an extra burden on the customers and the people who were parking in both Sono and in Wall Street, that we would pick up the state tax on parking that was applied to Norwalk. And that figure is $182,000, and that's in the budget. That's the budget that we approved. 2 or 3 members of the BET said, you know, that was a terrific thing to do on the part of the parking authority. But is that a sustainable business option? And I explained that when we made that decision back in January, it was very sustainable and it was worth doing. Obviously, times have changed. And one of the recommendations I'm going to make for next week is that we rescind that and we change our approach. And with the, whether the rates are the same or lower, that we now apply that 6.5%, something like that, to the parking fee, and the customer has to pay it. That saves the parking authority $182,000, and that's one area that we can make a major impact on reducing our costs. But Eric, you're right. We're going to have to make some hard decisions on how we spend money. Laz is going to have to make some tough decisions. City Hall, Catherine, Jessica, going to have to make some tough decisions on operational costs and what projects we do move forward with and what ones we decide not to move forward with until we reach some sense of normalcy. So that would be something that I'm going to bring up at the next meeting. And I'm hoping that everybody would agree with that. That's something that we should do. You know, we're in a whole different arena now as far as the revenue is concerned. Yes, Michael.
Oh, sorry.
Thank you. I think one of the things we might be missing that I haven't heard a lot of talk about is you know, if we do this somewhat quietly, we take all the bags off on the 20th, and then we don't really enforce except for the safety. And then little by little, and we're going to have meetings every 2 weeks so we can adjust this, but little by little we add in, for instance, start enforcing the time limits, the 2-hour, 4-hour time limits on the street, start enforcing the overnights, start enforcing, you know, until it comes back. What I haven't heard and what we haven't really talked about is the fact that I'm pretty sure that once we take off those bags, even without saying anything, the honest people are going to come back in and start paying for parking again. We're not going to have to say a thing. There will be people that don't pay still. There will be people that ask or question it. We have answers for those people. But I think the majority of the people will, as they return to whatever the new normal is, and as they begin to come back into town and take a street parking space or a Haviland deck or off-street parking space, they will then go back to their old habits of paying for parking. So I do think we're going to start to see our revenue increase. The enforcement part of our budget is only about 13%. So by not enforcing, we're really not hurting ourselves too bad. And we're also, you know, staying off the backlash. So I think a slow step approach, and I'm not saying what that approach is yet because we don't know. You know, the next meeting we have, we may be closer with a little more information, but I think pulling those bags off next week is the first good step. And then, you know, really leaning on how we handle enforcement moving forward instead of worrying about how much we're charging is probably a better way to go.
Okay.
I would agree with that, Mike. Because I think there's definitely validity in thinking that if somebody pulls up to a parking spot with a meter and they're not, and they're going to at least decide, what do I do? And they're going to make a decision. And so we don't have to say that to anybody, because that's why it's just recognition of a meter.
Right.
And I think there is a strategy that could be developed about how to sort of ease back into enforcement, and whatever that means. And but I think that is a component of the plan that needs to be developed. But I think what we need to agree on at our formal meeting is the rate, and how we, and within the proposal that we've put together, it mentions relaxed enforcement, and it mentions all the components that you and Dick have mentioned, but they all need detail around it. So I think if scenario 4 has the components, and then maybe at our meeting we talk about some of the details that could be rolled into it, then we might have something we could approve at the meeting. Because I think it would be the best to approve something at the meeting so that wheels can get in motion, and we could start talking about, with the marketing folks, about how to market it, how to say what needs to be said related to public relations. And so, Dick, to your point, the tax component is rolled into the models that we talked about tonight. And so I think that you're exactly right, that we do need to change that practice. And whether we need to say we've changed it or not, I don't know. But everything that we've put forth tonight, which I'm sorry that we didn't point it out, but it says either including or not including Connecticut sales tax, depending on what the information was. So the results of charging the tax or passing or allowing the consumer to pay the tax is factored into the numbers that we've looked at tonight.
Well, that's good to know. And we haven't said anything to the public, because that wouldn't take place until July.
Yeah.
Fiscal year.
Yeah.
And so,
to Mike's point,
what I'm talking about is, how do we make an impact on our cost for the next fiscal year? And that's $182,000, which is a lot of money. Right. When you consider that we're trying to reduce and we're trying to show that we're reducing our cost.
Right. Yeah, I agree. I completely. And I think, to Mike's point about enforcement, the tax topic might be the same thing, that something, adjustment is just simply made, and then no real fanfare around it. I don't know. That's a strategy. It needs its own sort of plan developed. But I think if we, what's important, I think, to at least as I've sort of been involved with Judd and the rest of the team on this, is scenario 4 gives us the ability to establish a pricing structure that's not going to change. Because I think that messaging is really hard to convey if we start in one place and then move to another. A month blows by in no time, and then it's going to feel like, wait a minute, they're changing things again. And so that's one of the key things that I would like to avoid, is that we don't start off with a message and then we change it the following month. But instead do what it sounds like everybody is saying now, handle other aspects of managed parking, like enforcement, in ways that make it friendly and comfortable, and then ramp those things up.
I think we need to, and let me make this suggestion, and don't send this stuff to each other or to me, but it would be good let me say, for example, what do we mean by lax enforcement, or whatever we're calling it? Why don't we each put a paragraph together and send it to Catherine and let her put those things together so that they can be sent back out to everybody else to think about for when we meet next week, so that we can make decisions on that. And also to talk about if we're going to move with this stuff in June, how are we going to handle managed parking? How are we going to handle the demand that may come up from the city or the state that says we're going to encroach on the roads or the sidewalks or whatever for more outdoor parking? And so we want to make sure that we allow pickup for those restaurants that are going to continue to do that. And then we want to make sure that we have some sort of a managed plan to make sure that the public can get to these spaces that they want to shop at. So I think it'd be good if, and anything else you can think of, but if you put a couple of ideas together, send them to Catherine. I'll do the same thing. She'll aggregate them and send them back out. And then you'll have a bunch of stuff that you can think about, so that when we meet on Wednesday, we can vote on the issues that we want to. And if we want to move forward the way it's been described, then we can vote on that. But so why don't I suggest that we do that? So everybody's got a thought, send something to Catherine. Catherine, you get a chance to put everything together and then share it with everybody.
One thing that would help me in that, I think that's a good idea. Do we have data that describe, because for me, it's going to focus on what Mike was talking about how do we sort of ramp up enforcement. In order to do that, I think that it would be helpful, at least to me, if they're the top 10 reasons people get tickets, what are they? And it is, let's say the one that's the most the most popular, is that 80% of ticketing, or is it 60% of ticketing? Do you see what I'm saying? Just so we can maybe define what impact these ideas would have on the ticketing as we know it in the past.
Well, we do know that the customer care tickets that we handed out were primarily for overstaying a limit. So I don't know what that percentage was, but I do know that the results were pretty dramatic in reducing the number of tickets that were given out on an annual basis. But that's a good point. And Rocky, if you can put something together on that. What are the main issues of ticketing?
I think it might also help to add the geography to that as well. So where is the highest area for tickets?
Yes.
We have that information, and we've given that to you in the past, so we'll just pull that up and make it more current.
Yeah, excellent. Thank you.
Sure.
I do want to, Dick, if you don't mind, I do want to flag that the executive order that came out in the last 24 hours, I'm going to circulate it to the authority. But there is talk of parking and on-street parking as well as parking lots. So I want to flag that in the sense that the city does not have a set policy as far as what we will be doing for outdoor dining, but there is language that speaks to on-street parking and speaks to lifting all parking requirements for it as well. So let me circulate that language, and I'll continue to keep you in the loop as policy gets developed. But I did want to flag that because I know that it may have some impact on the parking, but I'm just unclear as to what that impact is at this time. So as soon as I get a better sense of that, I'll circulate it.
Jesse, I also think that you were looking into that mystical question that I raised, and that is, how's the public going to react to come into restaurants and if you have any information along those lines on any sources on that, that would be helpful too.
Will do, Dick. Yeah, we'll follow up with CERC. We asked CERC to, we've been working with different partners to be able to collect information both on what restaurants need to be able to consider opening, and then also what customers would feel comfortable with in order to be able to go out and dine in these places. So any information we get, we'll circulate that as well.
Okay.
So some of these plans are some of what we might ultimately talk about if we're taking parking spaces for use for like outdoor dining. Then that what pops into my mind is the traffic, the vehicular traffic that's on the remaining street. So I know that here on Main Street, on North Main Street, there's an enormous amount of very large truck traffic. So would we have the latitude if we said that we were going to take parking spaces to change the kinds of vehicles that can you still use the street?
Well, I think that the city is a long way away from making that kind of a determination on whether and where. The mayor brought it up, but I don't know that there's a plan that they are thinking of right now. It's a difficult thing to do.
Right. I mean, just seeing firsthand, it's amazing how many enormous trucks come down Main Street, and Main Street's roughly parallel to Martin Luther King. So why aren't the trucks over there? It's going to raise it. We could get into that sort of stuff.
Well, we do know that one of the issues we want to address is the residents in the Sono area that are taking up all the parking spaces because they're free. We do know that we want to come up with something that is a management for curb service, and then any other suggestions that you may have on how we move along, including what do we do with the enforcement and what do we employ, what kind of how do we phase that in? Do we go from doing nothing to then, as Mike had suggested, then dealing with the hour, 2 hours, or whatever the hell it is, limit of time? So any thoughts that you have on any of the points that came up that you can articulate, let's try to get those so that we all can look them over before we meet next Wednesday.
Just, okay, I absolutely. But I'll just make another plug for on the when we start this. One of the things that I convey to people all the time is that managed parking is good for business, and if it's true what George was saying, that having those spots never be empty is bad for business, then I don't feel that delaying it is good for business. So I think we need to pick a position and act from it, regardless of whether some people might not like it. If we're making decisions and doing things that are good for business, then we need to do those things, whether it's comfortable or not.
I think the parking authority's been doing that for a long while, but so you're right. It's good to reinforce that. Anything?
Dick, can I just say one thing?
Yes, you can.
Your meeting is not next Wednesday. It is the 27th. It's the fourth Wednesday of the month.
2 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
2 weeks off.
I'm sorry. Yes, it is the 27th.
I just want to make sure that's clear in case anybody thinks they're getting a Zoom invite.
I can't get enough of these meetings.
And by the way, the number of meetings, and I would just about every one of you brought it up. I think we should continue to do what we're doing. We're having at least 2 meetings a month. So when we schedule what we're going to do in June, reschedule 2 meetings in June.
Yeah.
Anything else? Thank you for the calendar correction, Catherine. And I'm holding you responsible for sending the May 12th date on this thing here that I opened up the meeting with, and or whoever put it together. But thank you. It is the 27th and not next week. But that's it.
Okay.
We can adjourn. We weren't doing any voting. We were doing some negotiations. So I think
One thing I'd like to make sure we cover, removing the bags isn't something I don't think we need to vote on, because I don't think it was an action we voted on to put in place. So can we agree that they need to come down on the 20th?
I agree.
I agree.
I agree.
I think we can all agree on that. Yeah. So,
Okay.
yeah.
Okay. So we can do that. Okay, that can be a motion.
Fine. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you.
Tom, you want to adjourn the special meeting?
I will ecstatically move to adjourn the meeting.
I'll second that.
Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.